I mean, what do you think? You think they stand a chance? Well, you're on their side, aren't you? Who are you betting on,
Magic mirror on the wall. Who is the fairest one of all?
Look at these lies.
One shall stand, one shall fall.
Even if one of them survives,
the only way to stop him is to make another movie.
Welcome to the Celluloid Mirror. I am one of your hosts, Sean Mannion.
And I am your other host, Nicole Solomon. On the Celluloid Mirror, we take two films and look at what they reflect about each other, the audience, and our culture at large. Today, we are going to be talking about Coralie Fargeat, The Substance, and Lars von Trier's Dogville.
We will start by giving a brief synopsis of each film and discuss our response to the films, as well as critical responses before diving in on what the films say about each other.
And there's something special today, Sean. For the first time,
something special. For the first time. I interrupted you while you were talking. You go ahead and continue. Apologies.
It was the first time that has ever happened.
I don't know what you mean. Like, we don't interrupt each other at all, ever.
That's what I'm saying. This is the first time it's ever happened. And it's happening on YouTube.
It's happening on YouTube. Not the first time we've live streamed to YouTube, but the first time we've done it publicly and with fancy stuff.
It's our first time recording using OBS.
Yes, it's our first time doing this live stream via OBS and setting things up where we're doing live stream first. And like, this is kind of, we rebooted the podcast in a way. We're like Spider-Man or Michael Myers. Like this is our Halloween ends. No.
Yeah, we're closer to Queens. It's more like Spider-Man.
Okay, fair. So,
but yeah, we're doing a new thing. We're live streaming it. We can spare our audience all of the joy we feel about the lack of post-production we're hoping is going to come with this new format, but that's for us to enjoy, not them. We can hoard that joy.
Well, for our audience, especially for anybody who used to listen to the first two seasons or still listens to the first two seasons, this will be shorter. We are putting a time limit on ourselves because we do go on.
We do go on. I've noticed this about us.
And other people have noticed. And we don't mind, except for the editing part. So,
well, that's the whole thing.
Yeah, that is. So with that, to not go on, should we talk about the films that we're talking about today?
I think that's a great idea. Should I tell us about The Substance?
I would love for you to tell us all about The Substance.
Well, Coralie Fargeat's The Substance is a 2024 film about a fading celebrity who takes a black market drug, a cell-replicating substance that temporarily creates a younger, better version of herself. Can you tell us about Dogville? What's Dogville?
Can anybody tell anybody about Dogville? I mean, it's a Lars von Trier film. One, can anybody really explain it? And two, does anybody want to? But I'll try. Lars von Trier's Dogville is a 2003 film about a woman on the run from the mob who is reluctantly accepted in a small Colorado community in exchange for labor. But when a search visits the town, she finds out that their support has a price. as it often does.
So, Sean, what did we think about these films?
What did we think about these films? I liked both of the films. The Substance, I wasn't sure about when I saw the trailers. I was kind of like, oh, this seems like a thing that is like, it seemed like it would be obvious what it is. And it was exactly what I was kind of expecting, but it was much more spectacular and gross. And that was fun. And it was also great to, the thing I keep saying with folks is, it's nice to have a reminder of how great an actress that Demi Moore is, because I haven't seen her that much in the last decades. And then seeing her again in this, it's like, oh yeah, she's fantastic. And she always was. And it's a great reminder of that. And Dogville, for me, I saw it for the first time years ago. I think when I went through my watch a bunch of Lars von Trier films phase, as many a young male filmmaker does, or at least a young male filmmaker around my age. I liked it at the time. Rewatching it for the show this time, I think I have a greater appreciation for it. I think I like it more now than I did then. I think it seems more relevant now than probably I would argue it was at the time. But that's something we can talk about a little bit later. I liked both of the films. What about yourself, Nicole? How do you feel?
You don't want to ask me that question.
I do. I always want to know about your feelings.
We're not going to talk about my feelings. We are going to talk about what I think about these two films, though. I like both these films. I've seen The Substance a couple times. I like The Substance a lot. I was planning to see it since I heard about it. I liked Coralie Fargeat's first feature, Revenge. I was curious to see Demi Moore come back. I heard that it was like a body horror thing, and I like body horror. So like I was going to see this movie. I actually liked it a lot more than I expected to. For whatever reasons, maybe it's because I'm a hater and like people were so excited about this movie. And whenever like there's a certain kind of fever pitch about like, this is the thing, there's a part of me that just my inner hater comes out a little. And I'm like, is it though? And then, but like, I really liked this film. I liked it a lot. We'll talk about specifics of it later, but I think it's a very successful film at what it's trying to do, and one that I get a lot out of. Watching it a second time recently, I notice more little things. It's a very, intentionally crafted film. If you like looking at filmmaking, there's a lot of nice stuff in there. Highly recommend the Making of featurette that's on YouTube. You haven't watched that yet,
I
right?
haven't watched it yet. I probably should have for this, but I didn't.
Just watch it for our stuff. Just watch it for our projects. I care more about that. The Dogville, I've been meaning to watch since it came out. I think I have more reservations about Dogville than The Substance, but overall I liked it. It has some of the same kinds of problems that, to me, that a lot of Lars von Trier stuff does, but I think it's an interesting film, and it's the kind of thing that, I get something from. I don't know when I'm going to watch it again. Maybe, at some point, but it is long and it is not fun. And, but I haven't given it stars yet on Letterboxd, but I might give it like 3.5 or something. It's a weird one because there's stuff I really, really like, and then there's stuff where I feel like it's less successful. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. Yeah, for me. So that's what I think about those films. What did critics think about them?
I was going to ask, like, well, what do they think? Well, with the Rotten Tomatoes, which I have reservations about in general, but it is a measure of stuff. For The Substance, it has an 89% critic score and a 75% audience score. And Dogville is almost the opposite. It's a 70% critic score and an 89% audience score. So, with
It
a
must be
popcorn
that it's got to be that that's just a very self-selecting audience, because
Yeah.
that is a shocking percentage to me for this film.
It's people who are going to go and watch Lars von Trier and then go as an audience member and like vote for it there. It's also, we've talked about this vaguely, I think a couple times, because we play that Vulture game, Cinematrix, every day.
We sure do.
And sometimes they have like over 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I get mad at it because older films that are good, that are classics, have lower scores for various reasons. I think there's a lot of people who might like have conspiracy theories about it. I just think that like there were less people reviewing things in like 1985, so the percentage is skewed, that sort of thing. So, it's always skewed. It's nice that there's a separate audience versus critic score, but as the people say jokingly, everybody's a critic. So, speaking of critics, we have a selection of quotes from critics that I thought were fun. Do you want to read the ones from The Substance?
Sure.
Maybe we can alternate. How does that sound?
Sounds great. Rachel, I may be mispronouncing her name. Apologies. Rachel Simi of The New Yorker says that, for my money, one of the best things you can do this season is to run to see the French director Coralie Fargeat's The Substance while it is still playing on the big screen. And then Claudia Puig wrote in Film Week, falls into the category of films that men like to claim is feminist. Men like to claim are feminist? Never mind, this might be a typo on our part. So kind of contradictory, different opinions there. Stephen Romai.
Well, no, it would be is feminist because it's a category and category is singular.
Oh, you're right. Correct. I was wrong.
The only time either of us will admit such a thing.
Yeah, it didn't happen. Let's just keep going.
Exactly.
That was disorienting. So anyway, Stephen Romai from The Australian says, this is a film unlike any other you will see right now. It is not to everyone's taste for this reviewer who craves originality. It is a winner. And Wendy Ide from The Observer says, deep within the oozing spinal fluids and pustulant growths here, there's a kernel of credibility. The Substance plunges us into the deranged, disorienting, emotional carnage of menopause in a way that few other films have managed. So that's like, those are some thoughts and opinions. Those are some thoughts and opinions. Should we talk about what Letterboxd reviewers were saying in terms of thoughts and opinions? Do you want to share?
I would love to share what the people had to say on Letterboxd. So just to be clear about how we selected from Letterboxd, I opened Letterboxd, I opened the films, I went to 0.5 star, I went to 5 star, and I just picked whatever was on like the first 2 pages that I thought was entertaining. I don't know any of these people. I didn't really look at their profiles. I don't endorse anybody. Whatever. I don't know who these people are. So HQMMYY, Hukumi, I guess, in the 0.5 star category said, of The Substance, what the fuck? That's the review. That's the whole thing. Another 0.5 star from Cass is horrible, boring and disgusting, and then disgusting. I wanted the movie to end for the last 15 minutes. I didn't enjoy myself, and I don't think anyone else should watch it. It's an opinion.
It is an opinion.
5-star reviews. I did pick more 5-star reviews just because I wanted to. I had no idea what this movie was going in and did not expect it to be like Tusk if it was actually good. I really love absurd horror movies, and the ending scene really was perfect to end the movie, as many other things would have been anticlimactic. And that is apparently from Vince McMahon. So probably
Surprising.
not the Vince McMahon, but a Vince McMahon.
Oh God, you just have to put a damper on everything.
I
don't
do.
you?
Let's pretend it's the real Vince
if you
McMahon.
believe. Yeah.
And then Bye Breezy, or Bibby Breezy perhaps, said, "To be fair, I was drunk, but I was intrigued," in all caps. Intrigued in all caps. And then perhaps my favorite 5-star review of anything in a minute is, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing, but Geo fucking L said, "Shotty got a split personality problem. Fucking terrifying after smoking a spliff." So that, like, fair. That's very fair. Do you want to swap it around for Dogville? I can do the critics and you can have fun with the people.
Great. I'll have fun with people. What did critics say about Dogville?
Critics said about Dogville, Roger Ebert, who we often have referred to on the show when covering critics, said Lars von Trier exhibits the imagination of an artist and the pedantry of a crank in Dogville, a film that works as a demonstration of how a good idea can go wrong. His dislike of the United States, parentheses, which he has never visited since he is afraid of airplanes, which, you know what, is not unreasonable. Just again, as a side, airplanes are terrible, is so palpable that it flies beyond criticism into the realm of derangement. And this is his 2-star review.
Like, fair, but also this is one of the things I like about Dogville.
Yeah. Also, to be honest, and we can get into this in a second, but the dislike of the United States and how it's criticism in Dogville, I can understand how, I believe this quote is from when the film came out in like 2003, 2004, probably seemed a lot. Today, Dogville seems like it doesn't go far enough to me in terms of criticism. So, you know, bless Roger Ebert, he didn't have to see how right Lars von Trier is. Jeff and... Well, go ahead.
I just had a thought. Maybe I have a Ouija board, not right now, but for a future episode, maybe the ghost of Roger Ebert could guest. Yeah, I'm thinking.
We'll try for it. We'll try for the Roger Ebert seance.
But what does Jeff Andrew have to say?
Jeff Andrew of Time Out said of Dogville, ambitious, intriguing, but fatally self-important, which honestly I feel like may have been a reused criticism of any Lars von Trier film. You can just say that about all of them. So.
That's very fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the fatally self-important. Some of us might not think the self-importance is fatal. It might just be maiming.
That makes sense.
What did other critics say?
Anne Hornaday of the Washington Post said, "For all of Dogville's strengths, its powerful performances, the ingenious staging, how quickly and completely the audience accepts its stylized reality, its take-home message is ultimately measly." And then David Denby of the New Yorker said, "What Lars von Trier has achieved is avant-gardism for idiots." Okay, that's fair.
It's funny.
It's funny. It's a good critical line. That's good. And then Alan Morrison, the last of these quotes that we pulled for Dogville, said, bold stylistic decisions reinforce the themes of the narrative, while a strong story and convincing performances prove equal to the task of carrying such an extended running time.
It is an extended running time. Should I share what the people have to say? The people of Letterboxd, the little people in our phones.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, some people gave Dogville half a star, including Viral Plague, who said, I think this is the most upsetting movie I've ever watched. I could give Viral Plague some recs if they're looking to expand how upsetting films they watch are, but I mean, it's not a fun movie.
No.
The Dogville. It's not. Digikiki says, fucking terrible. It haunts my nightmares, and I use it as an example of a movie I wanted to walk out of the cinema on. I mean, they could have left. I understand. I never want to walk out of a movie because I'm worried people will think it's like a statement and not just, you know what, I've had enough. But
the only time I'm critical is when when people go to something where it's like, you should kind of know what this is going to be. Like a movie like this, you might not know. Like you might be like, yeah, but you know, because
I guess because it was Nicole Kidman, maybe it's like, that's what I'm saying. It's a new art movie from an acclaimed director.
Yeah, because when I think of people walking out of like a film and me being like criticizing them for it, it's when I went to see Poultrygeist, The Chicken Dead, which is a trauma film, which just from the title to there's nobody you would know in it. It's a trauma film. Why did you go? Like, I thought it was gross. I'll never watch it again. But I stayed through the whole thing because I knew what I was in for, and I knew, like, this is just what it's going to be. So just, you know, anyway.
I do feel a little bit of judgment towards people who are like, this is so gross about the substance, though, because I'm like, that was the whole promo for this movie.
No, I never saw a promo that said it was gross. I didn't know it was going to be what it was, which I was delighted by, but I didn't know.
Okay, so maybe I'm wrong. I feel like I just kept hearing like, this is the new, I mean, the misleading thing I kept hearing was like Cronenberg, and it's not very Cronenbergian to me. It's like, it's much more obviously like Kubrick is like the director. She's like very intentionally paying homage to right and left throughout that movie. Like, I'm sure she likes David Cronenberg, who doesn't, but
yeah.
Anyway, there's more people in my phone with stuff to say. Should I?
Yeah.
Share?
What's the next one?
Darkman Rep says, I had to stop in the first 15 minutes. What the fuck is the camera movement? It's like a YouTube video. That's funny to me. I don't agree, actually. I'm like, it's really not. I see why you're saying that, but the camera movement in that shit is like blocked to perfection. Like the camera movement is not sloppy. It's very good. I have some critiques of the cinematography of that movie that are similar to the ones I had the last time we did Lars von Trier, which is that I think he pulls his punches and feels like he needs to make everything ugly, like his soul.
His soul is ugly.
I believe his soul is ugly. He doesn't have to make the picture ugly for me to believe that. But
what did the people who liked the movie say?
The people who liked the movie said, Emily Hosel says, the set design alone is worth at least 3 hours of your time. I'm not sure if this person is being sarcastic or not.
Which is why I loved that.
I do like the set design. For people who have not seen Dogville, you know, there's no set. There's a stage basically with or a stage area with chalk drawings outlining the different buildings and streets, and they're labeled. And fairly minimal like set deck beyond that. Like if they need a bed, there'll be a bed, but it's minimal set, very Brechtian, I believe is what von Trier is referencing here. I like that because I like it when people just try shit and do things differently. But it is a minimal set. So anyway, T-Mac33 says, what if their best wasn't good enough? Kidman putting on a clinic. Set design is absolutely stunning. Nicole Kidman's great in this movie. Like,
It's fantastic.
she's a
And
great
Nicole
actress.
is great.
She's always
She's a
great.
actor. She's always wonderful.
She's always wonderful. She's wonderful in this. So is everybody else, you know, like Lauren Bacall's in this thing. There's it's a lot. Anyway. And Timachuk says his movies make me hate men, capitalized, with a passion, but I guess it's the point of it. Tom was right first, then wrong, then right, then part of the problem, and finally right. Anyway, I love vengeance, especially when it's Nicole against so many sorry-ass bums.
They are some sorry-ass bums.
They are some sorry-ass bums.
This leads me to a question for you, though, Nicole. It's an important question. I want you to think about it.
Okay.
Nicole, who is today's sponsor? Because I think it's time for a word from our sponsor.
A word from our sponsors. I think it is time for a word from our sponsor. Let me think really hard.
Who's sponsoring today's show?
Today, the show is being sponsored by Bartholomew's Gowanus Surfing Adventures and Kebabs.
Ah, Bartholomew's Gowanus Surfing Adventures and Kebabs, you say?
I do. And I say it because we live in Brooklyn. We have the Gowanus right here. And we are not taking full advantage of this moving body of water and all of the adventures to be had therein. Now, Sean, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Nicole, if I go on a surfing adventure in the Gowanus, I'm going to get real hungry. And are there that many spots where I can get something really satisfying, like right there by the edge of the river? Like the Whole Foods is a bit of a schlep, and I don't like going to that Whole Foods anyway. We were around there when I fucked up my ankle that one time when we were location scouting. That's where the kebabs come in. This is Bartholomew's Gowanus Surfing Adventures and Kebabs. You get done with your surfing adventure, you got whatever radiation maybe you picked up. Maybe there's a 3-headed fish you're taking home as a pet that has infected you with some sort of new disease we don't know about yet. There's a lot going on when you get done with your surfing adventure. You may be horrifically wounded. You may be very wet and cold. What could possibly meet everyone's needs upon departing a surfing adventure in the Gowanus then? Kebabs. I ask you, Sean, what?
I do like a kebab.
I know you do.
So where can I find Bartholomew's Gowanus Surfing Adventures and Kebabs?
Well, you can find Bartholomew's Gowanus Surfing Adventures and Kebabs. You might think it would be right by the Gowanus, but counterintuitively, it is on Route 13 next to Bennigan's.
As so many of our sponsors have been.
I'm starting to wonder if it's like a ghost kitchen of sponsors.
It's
next
possible.
to Bennigan's in Route 13. We don't ask.
We don't
question. We just take the sponsorship.
We just take the sponsorship. So before we move forward, we should probably contextualize that for people.
And that, Sean, is today's sponsor. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, kind of. I also just wanted to say for audience members, if they didn't pick up on it, that is a joke for us. that we didn't really include in the show most of the time, except for
But I just bought
Patreon
5
patrons.
gift certificates to Bartholomew's go on a surfing adventures and kebabs. You telling me these are worthless? This is all a joke.
They're not worthless. You can use them as scrap paper. You just write on the back.
There's
take
a
notes.
pattern on the back of like all these mutated fish and things. Like,
I mean, that's
I can't do that.
That seems like a you problem.
Yeah, I guess it's just another life lesson.
Just another life lesson. No, I just wanted to say for people, this is a fun thing where Nicole improvs, does not know what the sponsor's going to be. Honestly, as happened today, I sometimes don't know what the sponsor's going to be until I realize we're about 2 minutes from her having to do it. And then I just make something up and she has to do a commercial.
I do a commercial for a fake business because we have no sponsors. Would you like to sponsor us? We can improv an ad for your real business if you want.
If you want. Doesn't mean she's not going to have to improv for fake ones too. Like, we'll just expand the show. It's great.
The show. It can get longer again.
Get longer again. But instead of getting longer again, let's get to, we've talked about what the films are. We've talked about the response to the films, ours, critics, other people. But all right, so what do these films have to do with each other? What do they reflect about one another?
Well, the first thing, and the thing that was the impetus for us to choose this pairing for an episode, is they are both films about the United States from filmmakers who are not from the United States and did not choose to shoot their films about the United States in the United States. So these are both films, in this case, they're both European filmmakers making films that are in part telling US Americans about ourselves and shooting someplace else. That is a particular kind of weird subgenre that's of interest to me. A friend of the show, previous guest, Johannes Grensfurtner's Masking Threshold is another example of a film that falls into this category. And I have a list on my Letterboxd of films by non-US filmmakers about the United States, not shot in the United States. And I said to Sean, hey, that would be a fun thing. Any films on this list you want to talk about? And he said, how about the Substance and Dogville? I had not seen Dogville yet, so it was a great opportunity for me to fill in that gap. So these are two very different films with very different kind of takes on the US. I think Dogville is much more specifically about the United States, whereas The Substance is more about the roles of women in a, we could say maybe capitalist framework, using the United States and Hollywood as their example, but I don't think The Substance is as much a critique of the United States specifically as Dogville is.
Yeah, Dogville's very focused on They're both criticizing the culture of the United States from different angles. I would say that Dogville is broader. Dogville is broader. Dogville is about the people. Dogville is about the broader culture. And I think that Substance is a lot more focused on celebrity, youth, and sort of the entertainment culture and how those affect individuals, which is, both are critiques of the U.S., but I think also just sort of broader critiques of the broader global culture as far as it exists, which is, there's a lot of shared things that happen, especially with Europe, so to speak.
I thought it was also interesting the very different directions the two films go to create the United States outside of the US. I didn't even think about the fact that The Substance was shot in France until
Oh, yeah,
I
I never
watched
occurred
the
to
making
that.
of Featurette. Yeah, I just did not think about it. And in the making of Featurette, she talks a lot. Coralie Fargeat talks a lot about how, it's set in LA. So it's in LA. They found, exteriors that they could use that could double for an LA street. But she was saying the thing that really sold it was just having these relatively tight shots of palm trees.
Mm-hmm.
They just got all these shots of palm trees. And she's like, the palm tree is so iconic and such a Hollywood that you just drop these palm tree shots in and it totally sells everything else. I mean, it's a film that's mostly interiors anyway, or like relatively nondescript exteriors, and it's sunny. That's how you know it's LA, 'cause it's sunny.
Sunny, palm trees. Somebody says it's LA. You're going to be able to sell it's LA. If you throw in a beach, people might be confused and think it's Miami or somewhere else in Florida. But yeah, you throw in a beach and it's Miami instead. But that's also and I think both of these in that sense, with Dogville being the more extreme example, are really about, in that sense, the audience wants to believe, to accept what you tell them. You tell them we're in a place, we're in that place, because that's the point, right? Like, I want to be transported where you want me to go. So you don't have to shoot in that specific location. You don't have to do it this specific way. And to more extreme example being the sort of Brechtian theater set that is Dogville, and, a little sound design and the actors just being very strict about, no, there's a thing here because there's chalk on the ground, and you're sold and you're like, yeah, he's behind a wall. I can just see through the wall, but there's a wall there. There's a door there.
I mean, it clearly works pretty well, because even people who hate the movie hate it because it's so disturbing. And if this is the kind of big swing in set design that could, if it didn't work, undermine your whole film, and it wouldn't be able to sustain the kind of discomfort that it does if it didn't. Clearly people are able to suspend their disbelief even if they are confused or put off at the same time. It's really interesting. There aren't a lot of movies that you can really compare it to in terms of what they chose to do with the set, outside of maybe much more avant-garde kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's also interesting because The Substance, it's like the thing you said about people want to suspend disbelief. They want to believe that we are where we're telling the audience we are. And in order to do that, though, you do need to have a lot of control over what's in your frame. What are we going to put in the frame? What do we need to put in the frame to sell this? Whether that's a palm tree or, we're going to pretend that we have an elevator here by taking two folding tables and putting them on their sides and slowly opening them to fake an elevator door when we're just in a room. Did that make any sense, what I just said? You know what I'm saying. It's about whatever's happening outside of your frame doesn't matter in terms of the movie. That prosthetic they made of Demi Moore that the double comes out of, births out of, that, and it's in the posters, that shot of Demi Moore's back, basically. That prosthetic had no head and no legs or anything, because she's it's always going to be shown in these tightly framed shots, so why should we waste the fucking money making a full body when we don't have to? And there's so much of that throughout the whole movie, and Revenge too, actually. There's so many tight shots, and I think that's part of why it works so well. I'm kind of changing topic, I realize.
No, that's okay. It's just kind of what we're talking about is sort of how both of them are very good at leveraging the tools of film and the agreement with the audience, which is, I'm telling you this story. This is what it is. You accept what it is as as I've explained it to you, and we're going to have a story together. And I think it's a thing that, and one of the reasons why it's something worth talking about is it's a thing that we know as filmmakers, in talking with other filmmakers and working with other filmmakers and even our own impulses, there's this drive to be like, well, we have to make sure the thing is the thing. We have to, we worry about the audience knowing that that door isn't really the door to the bathroom. It's the door to another bedroom, or that's the door to this other thing. I know I've had that issue with my short film, Modern Prometheus. I got very nervous about one whole room is shot on a completely different location for that. And the door that we send people to walk through in the main set was the door to the bathroom. And ultimately, like, I fretted, and this was like the first longer film that I made. I fretted about like, are people going to like get that those are different? And then the people who saw it, they're like, no, if you hadn't told me that, I never would have done it. And then that just became part of my practice since. Like, there's the apartments in Meme are all like multiple locations usually, sometimes I use the same location for multiple places. Like, it's all about that. You're telling me this is what it is. I'll accept it because it's not that important to the story. I'm not here to figure it out. I'm here to embrace I'm here to embrace like what is being offered. So from a production standpoint, that's interesting. From a sort of larger like shared themes, I think they're both dealing in the victimization, the oppression of women. I think you can extend both of them to some degree to also talking about other vulnerable populations. A lot of the things are shared.
Dogville, certainly. I feel like the Substance is very focused on misogyny specifically, but
yeah.
Dogville is about misogyny, but it's also about xenophobia and to a degree racism and being an outsider in general. It's much more about the in-group and the out-group and forms of nationalism and things like that.
And both of them deal with women basically as a commodity, as, Dogville, it's domestic labor, and in
sexual labor,
and in The Substance, she's a commodity as being a star, being the star of this show, and like, well, she's gotten too old, so she's not a good commodity for what we're she's not selling what we need her to sell the way we want her to sell it anymore. Exactly.
We need the new one. Like, yeah. And relatedly, you pointed out they're both kind of about people being disposable.
Yeah.
As well. The Substance, specifically women being disposable. Dogville's a little more universal, I think.
Yeah.
But
yeah, go ahead.
You also pointed out that they're both kind of fairy tale like stories, and I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Watching Dogville again for this, and again, I hadn't watched it in a few years. I'd forgotten it has this voiceover, this John Hurt voiceover, and which reminded me of Babe, which I'd rewatched a few weeks ago. It has a very similar, different voiceover person, but it has that kind of similar tone to it. And it does have like the fairy tale quality of and I haven't studied them that deeply, but there is a fairy tale type story that is you get the stranger who comes into town or who comes into your life, and like how you treat them. And if you treat them well, you get rewarded. If you treat them poorly, you get punished. Usually a trickster type story, but this isn't exactly that, but it's very close. And then I do think that the transformative nature of The Substance, you can go back to fairy tales for that, and many classic fairy tale or, deep like folk tales and stuff like that have transformative things. I did want to point out that we do have a comment from MTV Europe Deepfakes. Hello from Montreal, Canada. Substance is the masterpiece with a smiley face. It is. It's a wonderful movie. MTV Europe Deepfakes. Good for you. I don't know if that's a joking username or something I should be concerned about. But welcome.
Welcome. Either way.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your comment.
Definitely. So, fairy tales.
Yeah, I think there's that fairy tale quality to it, which I think both separates them a little bit from reality, from our reality, and they both have that in different ways, but also makes them more broad and more like this is an experience to discuss, to relate to, like you relate your life to this, learn a lesson from this. I think that like they have that kind of quality to them. They're both trying to say something. Otherwise we wouldn't be talking about it. They're both trying to say something about people, culture, all of that. And I think to me, and I was alluding to this earlier, and I'm going to just kind of segue into it. I do think that Dogville is more, and one of the reasons I like it more now, Dogville is more relevant and more accurate now, or perhaps it was always accurate. It's just more clear now than it was when I first watched it, maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little longer, in the last 10 to 15 years. And I think certainly even more obvious than when it was first released. I do think that you can draw some parallels between the townspeople and the MAGA crowd. I think that they are very much in both the charitable and uncharitable ways. In both the charitable way of many people in the MAGA crowd are poor working people who don't know much about the world and are scared. And in the uncharitable way of they're cruel, stupid, hateful people. And both can be true at the same time. I think that Tom, to me, as I was rewatching it this time, very much looks like what popped up during the first Trump administration and what I'm not looking forward to seeing more of again, which is the resistance influencer or grifters. Yes, the resistance grifter, the resistance, like their whole identity is we're the resistance, but like they're just trying to sell you a T-shirt or bumper stickers.
They're the biggest Trump fans there are. Honestly,
they love it
because they don't. That he's responsible for their whole like public presence.
Yeah.
Much like how the media, however much some people may like to bitch about the supposedly liberal media, who the fuck you think got him elected? Yeah. He's great for them.
They love it. I think he's representative of all of that, and also like, something that we have too many recent examples of, which is the self-declared male feminist leader of feminism, like the not just the person who is male and agrees with tenets of feminism, but rather the one that insists that they are the one who knows what everybody should and be doing about this and is teaching about it and is the thought leader on it, so to speak.
Yeah, like, please, men, support feminist efforts. That's great. Just maybe shut up about it a little bit. Or you know what you can do? Go talk to your male friends about it. They're the ones who need to hear about it. Don't like publicize it on the social medias about what a feminist you are.
Yeah. If you are
like anything else, just walk the walk. Just walk the
elevate
walk.
female voices as I interrupt a woman. Listen, Nicole, what you need to understand is that I, as a male feminist, need to let women talk more. No. Let me say this.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Thank you.
But and then I think
Tom's the male feminist resistance grifter. The town is MAGA. I fully agree.
Grace is just about any victimized group, and it's very like specific that her name is Grace. Like,
yeah, it's Lars von Trier.
He's not
always
that
one for
he's not
subtlety.
subtle. And fuck subtlety. Like let him do his thing. It works.
Look, neither of these films are subtle, and that is part of what I like about both of them. You know, like nothing against subtlety, honestly. It has its place, but we are not living in subtle times. And I very much appreciate people who are just like, here it is. Here's, you know, Demi Moore's disembodied face on her Walk of Fame star.
I love that.
This is what you get.
It's
This
so
is,
good.
again, spoilers for the end of Dogville. Just go ahead 1 minute if you don't want to hear it. You know, or Nicole Kidman just being like, kill the kids and say you'll stop if she doesn't cry.
I mean, they may not have to go forward more than a minute because that part, that arrogance conversation between her and James Caan, I think was more, again, one of those parts where I think it's more relevant now. I think it's more important now because what he's talking about is the arrogance of forgiveness and mercy without accountability. And he's talking about holding people accountable. And I think, you know, that ending, that's really what made me really respond to the movie more this time, was just she's willing to forgive and extend mercy for so long. Like even during that conversation, she's arguing for it until she finally has that moment where she's just like, no, these people won't change because I'm kind to them. It's gone too far. People don't change unless you hold them accountable. And I do think, and you made a point about the substance as well in our notes that I want to draw into this in a second, but I do think her point about the children is relevant because, and I've been thinking about this for the last day or so since kind of reviewing our notes. In both of these films, there are children that choose to take part in, as much as children can make choices, take part in the activities that are being criticized. And I do think that while Grace's moment of saying kill the children first, which is mostly revenge on the mother and, you know, kind of giving back to her what she'd done by saying, well, you know, if she doesn't cry, maybe you'll let them live. Tell her that. That the children were very much participants in her torment in Dogville. They were active participants. There's the boy. Yeah.
That little boy who, for listeners at home, this is like one of the sicker things I've seen. Nicole Kidman's like babysitting or something, or is in the house for whatever reason. Oh, teaching. Yeah. And there's this little boy, and he basically demands that she spank him and says that if she doesn't, he will tell his mom that she hit him.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, she's not going to be hidden in this town anymore from the mafiosos she's hiding out from. And he keeps going. I don't remember the details, but like he's just being the worst kid you can possibly fucking imagine, trying to get her to spank him, which is extremely creepy. And she doesn't want to do it, but then he's threatening her, like threatening her life basically. And so she does ultimately spank him, and whatever that kid was getting out of that situation, it's not it's pretty unsavory
Yeah.
to watch. And I was reminded of in the Substance how at the big New Year's Eve show at the end, there's this one little girl in the audience, about the same age as the boy from Dogville, actually. There's this one little girl. She's there with her parents. She doesn't have any lines of dialogue or anything, but we see her enthusiastically applauding and enjoying this spectacular that involves like basically topless Vegas showgirls, like parading around. And I was like, oh, this is so how the United States is about like sex and sexuality, in that we're like horrific prudes, but also like bringing kids into pornographic situations that we're pretending aren't pornographic at the same time. Like I think about like families going to Hooters and stuff and bringing kids and how that's a family restaurant. And I'm like, but it's a tits restaurant. It's the restaurant you go to because you want to look at tits.
Oh, I thought it was owls, but I don't know. I think I've only gone once.
Oh, Sean.
No, you're right. It's there's the way that I think there's an argument maybe in both of these, maybe not being made by both of these, but an argument in both of these about how the next generation is molded by the adults responsible for them, and that just because they're children, they're not absolved of the responsibility for their engagement with these situations.
Yeah, and
they are active participants still.
They're active participants, but also they're being indoctrinated by their parents and the adults in their communities into these very perverse cycles of abuse and objectification. And, you know, like...
go ahead, sorry.
And there's like this strong layer of denial that feels very US. It also feels very Christian. This is a very similar film to Breaking the Waves in a lot of ways, except Breaking the Waves was about like the church and Dogville is about the United States as kind of like the oppressive institution. But there's they both traffic in like this kind of denial about like the parents bringing that little girl to the New Year's Eve show. They don't think, oh, I'm exposing my kid to, you know, inappropriate adult content because it's the New Year's Eve show. It's a spectacular. It's a tradition. And the cognitive dissonance there is like floors me. But I mean, similarly, you can't be a misogynist and rapist and abusive and not expect the children around to be learning that is how they should behave.
Yeah. I think that is, and then, you know, I think that little girl gets caught up in the spray of blood and gore, and ultimately
they make a point. She gets it too.
Yeah. And ultimately the little boy is one of the first to go at the end of Dogville. I mean, we said spoiler alert sort of, but also like we're going to be talking about films. We're going to be spoiling it a little bit because we have to talk about what the films are about.
An hour into the recording. Guess what, everyone?
Spoilers. But like, I also think, just to kind of wrap up the specific thing about Dogville, I was saying that I didn't mention was in Tom being the ally, I do think that it is important that Grace be the one who is executing him herself, because he, you know, he is one of the worst offenders of it, much like, to my mind, one of the worst offenders in the current moment is these resistance grifters, is these people who are really kind of, in some ways, taking focus away from people who are doing real work, and also in other ways just perpetuating what's wrong because it profits them, because it's what they need. And I think that it's Grace being this person who clearly her whole thing was, and it plays into this is as we were talking about offline before, that Dogville is kind of the end of a trilogy. It's Breaking the Waves. What's the other? Dancer in the Dark, and Dogville.
I think it's those three.
I think it's these three. And Dogville makes sense as a trilogy because in Dogville, she's learned the lesson, which is you don't forgive the abuse, you don't show mercy, you demand accountability, and you mete out punishment as it is deserved. And that town, the town of Dogville, the only one who survives is the dog, and the dog is the only one who didn't deserve to die, is, I think, the argument of it, because none of them could have ever learned. They were never held accountable. They all took advantage. And ultimately, they took advantage of her forgiveness, of her mercy, of her grace. And so they didn't have to. And so they need to be punished for it.
And everyone's punished at the end of The Substance, too. They're not all killed, but everyone gets sprayed with blood. And it was important for that blood to come from Elisu, or whatever they called the monster at the end. The Elizabeth Sue.
Monstro Elisu, I think is what it was called.
Monstro Elisu. Such a great character. Such great character design.
It's wonderful. It's gross.
Yeah, it's gross, but it's also so like poignant, which is part of what I love so much about The Substance. Is unlike Lars von Trier, I don't actually think Coralie Fargeat takes herself too seriously at all. No. I think The Substance is very funny. I mean, funny in the way that like Midsommar is funny.
Midsommar is comedy.
I agree. But it's a comedy that's also, it's not like you're laughing at everything happening. No. It's not that. And, Demi Moore's character, Elizabeth, is extremely sympathetic to me in The Substance. And that doesn't mean there aren't jokes. That doesn't mean there aren't parts I laugh out loud at. I totally do. But I'm not ever laughing like at her or at her predicament. It's not that kind of funny. But at the end, when she's in that blue dress that looks like just the Disney princess dress.
Yes.
When Margaret Qualley is wearing it earlier in the film on like the ads, I think, for the New Year's Eve show. But then when Elisu Monstro, which is the like monstrous, lumpen, misformed combination of selves.
It's the better version of Sue. That's what The Substance does for you.
Two heads are better than one.
And she has like 7.
I know. So she's set. But when she's like got the mask on, that's just like a cutout photo of Demi Moore's face, so people know it's her. And she has her hallucination when she first gets to the studio of everyone applauding her.
Yeah.
I mean, don't we all feel this way sometimes? Don't we all sometimes feel like we're the Elisu Monstro, like styling our 3 hairs and putting our mask on and going out on the town? I do. I feel like that. It's and at the end, when we see her disembodied face after just her face has like crawled onto her star on the walk of fame so it can dissolve in peace. It's both very funny and it's also really moving.
Yeah.
I think. And it's such a strong visual. But now I'm just talking about the visuals I like in The Substance.
But I do think that there's some direct commentary about well, there's obviously like entertainment culture, but I think there's also commentary about corporate culture. I do read. Yeah, exactly. I definitely read The Substance as a tech startup. It takes no accountability. Again, accountability pops up. It takes no accountability. It dumps it all on you. Did you use it correctly? Which I also think filters into some of my feelings about how, it's all about individual responsibility with climate change and recycling.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, corporations take no responsibility. And again, the people with the substance, they're faceless, they're on the phone. There's one support guy who's available 24/7, which is, to be honest,
hilarious.
Very much like a startup. We hired one support guy. He's available all the time.
He lives on the phone.
He lives on the phone.
We rented him the one remaining phone booth. He lives there. So he's got no excuse.
And
spending a lot on product design, though.
Very much on product design. Very much on where you pick up the product. Although that's like in a little hole in the wall somewhere, which also feels very much like tech startups. But it's also like solving a problem that's not a real problem, right? It's like Uber. Hey, how do you get around when you don't have a car? Let's invent a thing where you can order a car to show up at your house, because that doesn't exist except for taxis.
But this is whatever. We don't have to go into our taxi Uber disruption rant, though we could.
We could, but we don't need to.
But yeah, it's like everything about The Substance, like brand, is so funny to me. Like just the whole like aesthetic of it, and it feels very, very accurate. And it's like there's people starving, there's people without homes, there's a lot of useful things people could be inventing, but instead it as you said earlier, solves a problem that's not a real problem and creates tons of new problems.
Exactly.
But
yeah,
disruption.
Exactly. It's disrupting. It's disrupting your body. We are running a bit long. Well, not for us, but for
the new celluloid mirror, for the new us.
Do you have any final thoughts about either of these? Any like thing that you would really want to make sure that the people hear?
I kind of wanted to talk about the role of race in both of them, but I also kind of feel like that's a bigger conversation than a final thought.
I mean, it doesn't really exist in The Substance. There's somebody in the background.
There are background actors. All the characters with lines in The Substance are white. It's a very for all the talk of it being about, gender and women, it is very much about certain kinds of white women.
Yes.
Which doesn't, it's not even a criticism per se. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
But it's not a film that I think is trying to engage with race, for better or worse. I don't know. Maybe it would be a much worse film if it did try. So I'm just saying it's not really engaging with that. Whereas Dogville is clearly trying to, by having the one Black family that lives in Dogville. And I think the movie quite pointedly shows at a certain point taking part in the degradation and abuse of grace as well. And I think that my guess is that was Lars von Trier trying to acknowledge systemic racism in the United States while also showing that, oppressed people are not necessarily morally enlightened and, may very well jump on the oppression of somebody else when the time comes, which is true. I mean, that's also a fact. I I feel like sometimes that was one of the places where I was kind of like, okay, Lars von Trier. Like, I don't agree with Roger Ebert. I love that he's like, I'm going to make not one, but two different movies telling you all about yourselves, and I refuse to come to your country.
Yeah.
I got no problem with that. Like, great. But with that, I was a little bit like, I feel like you're punching a little above your weight class here, Lars von Trier, because I don't know that Lars von Trier's understanding of race and racism and how that intersects with other forms of oppression in the United States is particularly astute. So that part just kind of rubbed me a little bit. I was like, I get what you're doing here, but something about that part felt less accurate to me than a lot of the other stuff where I think he's talking about people he knows, if that makes sense. I feel like
Yeah.
he knows whatever. I felt like he was on a little bit shakier footing.
Yeah.
But I often feel like that. I mean, I haven't seen Manderley. I've heard about it.
I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it. He's always somebody where I have to, and except for when we do episodes lately, I haven't really been in the mood to watch his stuff. So I have to be in the mood.
Can't imagine why.
I do generally
Everything goes well with.
Like, I do generally appreciate it. Like, I will say, like, when I watched Melancholia, it was definitely a, like, yeah, that's what depression feels like. And that's nice to see.
Yeah, that's part of why that's maybe my favorite film of his. Because I'm just like, depression.
Exactly. Maybe we should do that one at some point.
Maybe we should make it a Lars von Trier.
Triad. Lars von Trier.
Lars von Triad.
There you go.
There we go. Great. Melancholia and something else.
Figure it out. I agree. I think that was interesting to note, but I also will say that, like, I appreciate he didn't push that too much further because I think he knew he didn't have that much standing on it, really, but still didn't want to ignore it. That's where I stand on that. But I think it is also worth at least pointing to it, gesturing to, and saying this is a thing as well, is that just because people are part of an oppressed group does not mean that they are going to be an ally to another oppressed group. And
relatedly, the one other thing I wanted to say before we go away is that was like a theme in Dogville in general, and Dogville also makes a lot more of a point about women undermining other women than the Substance does. I mean, the Substance is so much about the internal struggle.
Yes.
And undermining self, since the two main female characters in the Substance are the same person. But Dogville is very much about, like, these other bitches making life hell for Grace.
Yeah.
And, you know, jumping right in on the same kind of, like, sadistic control that some of the men are exhibiting. Just a thought I had about looking at the two of them.
No, absolutely. The Substance doesn't really engage with that side of it, which is good because it would muddle it.
And it's
it
also
is a very internal movie.
Else.
Yeah. It's doing a different thing. The
Dogville
movies don't have to all do one thing.
What?
Exactly.
I thought the goal of every movie was to finish the incomplete story of Beverly Hills 90210. We'll never know what happened. They're never doing another season of BH 90210.
I'm sorry.
I thought, and movies are failing, by the way, at this one goal. Like, no movie has succeeded. And this is why we have to keep doing this show.
I would argue that Michael Bay's Transformers films are actually the conclusion to Beverly Hills 90210 you've been looking for.
Oh, fuck. Now I'm going to have to watch those. Are we going to do them on the show, Sean?
No, dear God, no. I'm not going to watch those again. I already watched Zack Snyder's Justice League for this show. I'm not watching those.
Well, I'm not watching them either then, because I too watched Zack Snyder's Justice League. So that's that on that. Do we have other things we need to talk about, or?
Well, we should probably tell people that we're going to be doing more of these. Right now, it's looking like our schedule is going to be monthly.
Yeah, about once a month.
Like, we have a few things that we're talking about doing. We're talking about doing things like, because we just lost David Lynch, Great filmmaker we both love. We both just rewatched Mulholland Drive. We're talking about maybe Mulholland Drive, talking about that. We won't say what we're pairing things with right now.
Something good.
Something good. We've definitely talked about Mulholland Drive. We're talking about Wicked, Hellraiser. We already did Hellraiser 2, so we're doing it in reverse order. We're talking about Stick It, if you're not familiar with Stick It. I wasn't until we watched it in kind of a group viewing a few years ago.
Great film. It's
Great
so
film.
underrated.
From the same writer who did Bring It On. And if you don't love Bring It On, you're the problem, because it's a delightful movie. I think we have a few other things sitting out there as potentials.
We do.
But yeah, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/4milecircus.
Free stuff on the Patreon. Subscribe, pay, please. But also, you can subscribe for free. And we are planning on making more stuff available on the free tier and posting new free stuff as well this year. So honestly, we're not on the social medias so much anymore. So
No.
if you want to just make sure you can stay in touch with us and keep up with what's going on, that is probably the single best place to do it. And you do not need to pay. Although we would like it if you did. You'll get more stuff if you do. But
hey, just come for free. And, if you enjoy what's there. You can subscribe here for this show. Click the notify. It'll let you know when the next live is.
you're on the YouTube.
If you're on the YouTube, pardon. So for those of you who are listening to via audio, hopefully you've already subscribed to the show on your podcast platform of choice. But if you're catching this live and you want to share it with people who do prefer audio, or you just want to subscribe to the audio so you can listen to us on your drive time. Drive time with Nicole and Sean.
We can't do this
about
again.
Movies. And
what wants to come out.
I know.
My ridiculous Frankenstein hodgepodge of drive time voices that
they totally work. So find the Celluloid Mirror on your podcast platform of choice.
that
Our
could be
website,
Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Google Play or something premium.
literally, whatever the hell you want. Like, literally, just use the search function and find it.
Just
I kept
yell it
trying
into
to
your
share different
Nintendo.
links. Exactly. I kept trying to share different links when we were doing stuff before, and I'm just like, no, just use search the Celluloid
Pick up
Mirror.
your Sony Sport Walkman and just open it up, and into the part where the cassette goes, say the Celluloid Mirror.
Exactly. And people wonder why we wanted to keep it short.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
wonder.
so
No, I'm just
on
kidding.
that note, find us there.
Find us there.
Find us
Thank
there.
you for joining us.
Thank you
this
so
was
much.
fun
A
to do.
couple people did join us, and we really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
we
And we'll
got
be doing it
this-
again.
We will be doing it again because this is fun and we put the effort into putting this thing together. So, with that, goodbye, folks. The Celluloid Mirror is a production of 4 Mile Circus and is hosted by Sean Mannion and Nicole Solomon. Learn more at 4milecircus.com. To keep up with the next episode, make sure to subscribe and click that button to get reminders. You can also join our Patreon at patreon.com/4milecircus. All the links are below. Our opening and closing music is Twisted by Kevin MacLeod. You can find his music at incompetech.com.
I ended up in that hall of mirrors. There was another girl. She looked like me. Exactly like me.
Can you come with me, Jules?
That'll do, baby.
What happens when the story dies? The evil is set free.
to return some videotapes.